He was born into wealth, surrounded by everything money could buy, except understanding. His father, a billionaire, measured worth in status and perfection. But one night, in a quiet hotel ballroom, a simple act shattered that illusion. A young black waitress, overlooked by nearly everyone, offered something no amount of money could purchase: dignity. She placed her hand in his disabled son's, and together they began to dance. What happened next would not only silence the room but force a powerful man to confront the prejudice he never thought lived inside him. How could a single dance change everything? For most of his life, Nathaniel Carter lived in a world of glass towers and private jets. As one of the wealthiest men in the city, he carried himself with the quiet arrogance of someone who had never been told no. His time was consumed by boardrooms, stock prices, and the endless pursuit of power. But behind his carefully built empire was a silence he couldn't buy his way out of, the silence of his only son, Daniel. Daniel had been born with a disability that limited his mobility and made him dependent on others for almost everything. While Nathaniel provided the finest doctors, the most advanced equipment, and round-the-clock care, he had never offered what his son truly craved: connection. To him, emotions were distractions, and vulnerability was weakness. He loved Daniel, yes, but from a distance. That distance became clearer during lavish events, when Nathaniel would glide through conversations with politicians and CEOs, while Daniel sat quietly at the edge of the room, invisible to most. On this particular evening, the ballroom was alive with chandeliers and champagne, a place where status glittered brighter than the lights. Nathaniel moved through the crowd, unaware that his son's gaze was fixed elsewhere, not on the suits or gowns, but on the staff weaving silently between tables. And among them was a young black waitress, moving with practiced grace as she carried trays and avoided the dismissive stares of those who hardly noticed her. To Nathaniel, she was just part of the background. To Daniel, she was something different, someone who saw him, even when others did not. Neither of them knew it yet, but that fleeting recognition was about to change the course of their lives. The music swelled, laughter echoed, and deals were whispered under the soft glow of chandeliers. To most, the night was flawless. But for Daniel, it was another reminder of where he didn't belong. He sat in his chair near the corner, ignored by guests who saw him only as an accessory to his father's empire. Even Nathaniel barely noticed when his son's eyes followed the black waitress gliding across the floor. She carried herself differently than the others, calm, steady, unbothered by the dismissive looks cast her way. When her gaze met Daniel's, she didn't turn away. She smiled. It was small, almost unnoticeable, but to Daniel, it was more acknowledgement than he'd been given all night. Later, when the band struck up a slow tune, couples drifted to the dance floor. Daniel's hands trembled in his lap as he watched. His body longed for movement, for inclusion, but he knew better than to dream. Then, something unexpected happened. The waitress, during a lull in her duties, paused near his chair. She lowered her tray, bent slightly, and extended her hand. It was unthinkable. A server inviting the billionaire's disabled son to dance? The nearby guests exchanged glances, some scoffing, others whispering. To them, this wasn't just inappropriate. It was a breach of an invisible boundary. A black woman daring to touch what they saw as untouchable. Daniel hesitated, then placed his trembling hand in hers. With gentle strength, she guided him to the floor. His wheelchair rolled forward, not in pity, but in rhythm. The crowd's chatter sharpened into disapproval. Phones were raised. Sneeze cut through the air. "This isn't right," someone muttered loud enough to be heard. "Doesn't he know better?" Nathaniel turned just in time to see the scene unfold. His chest tightened. He saw the stares, the smirks, the disdain, not directed at him, but at her, to them. She was out of place, a servant stepping far beyond her role. And yet, Daniel's face glowed with something his father had never seen before: joy. The whispers grew darker. A group of men near the bar exchanged knowing looks, one shaking his head in mock disgust. A woman in a diamond necklace scoffed, fanning herself as if offended. The air was thick with silent judgment. Nathaniel knew these people, his peers, his allies, and he recognized the ugliness in their eyes. Still, he stood frozen, torn between appearances and truth. On the dance floor, the The waitress spun Daniel's chair gently, letting him lead with movements that were his own, however small. He laughed, and the sound was sharp against the room's cold silence. But as quickly as the moment blossomed, a hand landed firmly on the waitress's shoulder. A supervisor, face stern, pulled her back with quiet command. Daniel's smile faded. The music continued. The crowd exhaled relief, and the unspoken rules of the room reasserted themselves. Nathaniel's fist clenched at his side. For the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't suppress: shame. And beneath it, a question burned. Whose side was he truly on? The room fell into a suffocating silence as the supervisor yanked the waitress away. Her tray clattered against the floor, drawing every eye. Daniel's chair sat abandoned at the edge of the dance floor, his small moment of joy ripped away in an instant. The whispers were no longer whispers. They were sharp, cutting, loud enough for all to hear. Unprofessional. Disrespectful. And then, a word Nathaniel hadn't heard spoken aloud in years, but one that hit like a blade. She should know her place. The air grew heavier. Nathaniel's heart pounded as he saw the waitress lower her gaze, absorbing the humiliation like a wound she'd been forced to endure countless times before. She didn't argue. She didn't fight back. She simply stood there, silent, as though her dignity had been stripped away in front of the very people who thrived on her invisibility. And Daniel, his son, was weeping. His hands shook violently against the armrests, his body tense with a pain his father couldn't ignore. He wasn't crying for himself. He was crying for her, for the woman who had given him a moment of belonging, only to be punished for daring to treat him like he mattered. In that instant, Nathaniel saw it with blinding clarity. The wealth, the power, the respect, none of it shielded him from the truth. The people he surrounded himself with, the very society he upheld, thrived on divisions that dehumanized anyone who didn't fit their mold. Tonight, it wasn't his son's disability they mocked. It was her blackness. And together, they had become targets of a cruelty too familiar, too comfortable, to be denied. His chest tightened, rage boiling with a force he had never felt in a boardroom. For the first time in his life, Nathaniel Carter, the man who commanded empires, was powerless, unless he acted now. He looked at his son, then at her. The room waited, eyes sharpening, daring him to stay silent. His next move would either cement his place among them, or shatter it forever. And in that moment, one thought echoed louder than the music, louder than the whispers. Which side of history would he choose?